It's undeniable. The tremendous success that Demon Slayer achieved is undeniable. Month after month, the franchise was still breaking records of sales in all different kind of medias: anime, manga, figures, plushes, posters, and anything you can think of. If you can insert a picture of Nezuko on it, it will automatically be sold. However, something that bothers me is how is possible for something be so successful despite having a terrible writing, development of characters, and countless plot holes? This is what we will analyze today. Before diving into countless criticisms towards the franchise, the first thing every person needs to do is understand. Understand what, you might be asking. Understand everyone involved with the franchise and their decisions, but above everything, understanding the author. Before questioning why certain things happen in the story, I think it's important to try to understand why the author did things the way he did, regardless if such a thing was bad or good. Having that in mind, I started doing some research to see if I could find any interview with the author. However, I discovered the information available about the author is very scarce. All we know is it's a person called Koyoharu Gotoge, and that's it. No pictures, nothing. Just a draw of a crocodile wearing black glasses. So, okay, the author wants to be anonymous. Nothing wrong with that. But in that moment, I realized that if we don't even know how the author is, the chances of me finding any interview with that person have become practically non-existent. Still wanting to understand all the decisions the author made about the story, I kept searching for it, and ended up finding one with the first editor of the manga, Mr. Katayama. The editor was answering some questions, and one of them were, please tell us about the process leading up to the serialization of Demon Slayer. And in there, he told us a little about how everything started, but more than everything, an extremely interesting information is revealed. Due to its serious tone, lack of comic relief, and dark story, it didn't make the cut for the serialization. Did you notice something? That was very unexpected. At least for me, it never crossed my mind that the author didn't plan it to insert comedy in the story. And in a curious way, things started to make sense to me because that information lead us to the first flaw of the show, Comet. Comedy is subjective. Everyone knows. Things that are funny to a person may not be for another and vice versa. But even if the effectiveness of a joke is subjective, there is something that I call universal rules of comedy. What is that, you might be asking? Well, it means there are some rules about comedy that applies to every situation no matter what. Not everyone knows the existence of such rules, but even so, they are still there all the time, and everyone is under the effects of such rules. And the first universal rule of comedy is the more a joke is repeated, the less funny it becomes. The common scenario for this is you're watching something, a joke happens, and you find it funny. Later on, the same joke is used again, and maybe you still find it funny, and depending on the context, it might be even funnier in the second or third time. But the more you see the same joke being repeated, the less funny it gets. I will give you an example of the first rule. Zenitsu is a coward person. He is often trying to run away when facing a dangerous situation. When he is all by himself with no other option but to fight, he still tries to run away. This is a flaw. It's Zenitsu's weakness. Fixing it at some point of the story by slowly changing him through every situation he faces is the natural way. It's the coherent way. It's just common sense. It's called development of character, which is exactly what the show lacks: development. From the day I'm writing this review, Demon Slayer has 43 episodes aired, and if we compare Zenitsu's behavior from the last episode to the first one he appeared, he is still the exactly same person. He is still a completely coward, always thinking about running away, and as a consequence, we still get the same jokes being repeated, which, after a few times, it just becomes extremely annoying. The development is still non-existent, and sadly, Demon Slayer suffers from this the whole time. So, okay, extending too much the life of jokes is the first flaw of Demon Slayer, but what is the second flaw then? Kibutsu Jimbuzan is what drives the story, and accompanied by him, scenes with decent developments happen. I believe most characters in the show suffers from a disease called "I can't just kill my enemies. Before I do that, I need to start a speech about any subject to give the enemy a chance to put himself together and create a chance to defeat me." Or the abbreviation, "I'm stupid." There is no better way to describe the dialogues in this show. They are stupid. I will never accept the fact that Rui never finished the battle with Tanjiro in a few seconds, the same way he finished the guy who reached him before Tanjiro. Also, that scene has a very lazy writing created for the sole purpose of showing how powerful Rui is. A very lazy way to show it. However, you can argue by giving the excuse Rui didn't finish Tanjiro in 2 seconds because he is the protagonist. Exactly, and that's why the writing is lazy, because since the protagonist is not strong enough to avoid or deflect the attack, the story would simply end there with his death. But that would not be a good decision, right? Letting the protagonist die with the story unfinished is a bad decision. And that's why I consider that scene an example of lazy writing. It has a fundamental problem in the narrative construction. The only possible outcome for this is actually Rui not killing Tanjiro in the first move, which essentially ruins the whole scene. If you want to see an example of a decent and small build-up about how powerful is a character, episode 26 of the first season is a great one. Muzan's personality consists in someone overconfident and see himself as the perfect being, and using his own words, "I misunderstood nothing. I am never mistaken about anything. My word is absolute." That being said, we can assume he sees himself as a superior being compared to everyone else. That's just the kind of person Muzan is, and based on that, punishing anyone who disagrees with him or even someone who doubts his word is acceptable behavior based on his personality. If such a thing happens, it is expected because of his nature. That's why the entire scene feels so intense. On the other hand, you have a random Demon Slayer inserted out of nowhere with the most generic personality possible approaching to his death in an attempt to increase the emotion and tension of the upcoming battle between Tanjiro and him. The problem is, that battle ended in a fraction of a second. One single fast movement was enough to tear the person apart, which is the exactly same thing that should have happened to Tanjiro based on the way the author constructed this scene. See how the whole scene is badly written? And as if that wasn't enough, extremely convenient scenes with the characters is what happened most during the whole journey. I can't take the fight between Nezuko and the lower six seriously because the entire episode is filled with the enemy having hundreds of opportunities to claim victory over Nezuko, but she just doesn't. She always needs to stop everything, open her mouth, and start talking no sense. Same with her brother. The decision of giving a stupid opportunity for characters to overcome any situation ruins any possible emotion or feeling it could have achieved if done correctly. At this point in the video, I spent majority of the time criticizing this work, which seems to be an incoherent criticism if you compare it with numbers. At the beginning of the video, I noted the fact that Demon Slayer franchise was breaking records after records every month, and with sales number reaching into the millions of units, it only seems to reinforce the idea that my criticism is incoherent. Some people say Ufotable saved the franchise, which is incorrect. Before the anime existed, Demon Slayer wasn't one of the best-selling mangas at the time or had extremely high numbers. However, they were decent numbers. It was within a certain average quantity that manga usually sell, and the records that came later are numbers outside the curve. Very few franchises ever had such high sales numbers, and some of those examples are One Piece, Naruto, and Attack on Titan. But going back to this sentence, Ufotable didn't save it Demon Slayer, just made it extremely more popular, which leads to our next topic. Ufotable animations need no introduction. There is no better way to describe it as I'm speechless. And simply because their animation is beyond stunning. Their ability to mix CG with hand-drawn animation with excellent direction, extraordinary camera choice make this studio solid and, without a doubt, one of the best animation studios of the decade. Honestly, after watching Fate Heaven Spill, then right after watching a average anime with mediocre animation was really painful. Really painful. And why I'm prizing Ufotable animation so much? Because this is literally the only good aspect of the anime. It makes the entire awkward lazy writing fades away with unbelievable well-directed action sequence. And even more when you make an addition in the project with a great composer, Yuki Kajiura. She has been composing music and soundtracks for almost 20 years, and some of her notorious works are Erased, Fate franchise, Sword Art Online, and of course, Demon Slayer. Having an amazing animation kinda makes the entire journey of watching bad writing worth. It's not what it should be, but that's how it is. What I'm saying throughout the entire video essentially is extraordinary animation and direction are not capable of making a decent story. If you're adapting a story that has terrible dialogue and questionable scenes construction, the only solution would be completely change this aspect, which would make the adaptation not at all faithful to the source material, which could be a negative point for sales since people like a faithful adaptation and are not very receptive to big change, since most chains made things worse, but that's a subject for another video. But that's it. My name is Philip, and you are on the Filter Experience.